والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing in our lessons on the fiqh of food and drink. Last week we were talking about the issue of additives or enzymes. Particularly we mentioned lecithin and L-lysine and how to deal with those kind of additives in our food. So this week, inshallah, we'll finish the rest of the additives, and then we'll move to khamar, alcohol and food. And that one will continue also next week. So to begin with, we have additives. When we use the term additives in food, what we mean is colors, preservatives, and emulsifiers. These are all chemicals put in our food to either make the color change, to keep the shelf life longer, to stick together different products inside, and sometimes even sweeteners. Right? You put in to sweeten the food. So technically, here in Health Canada, when they define food additive, it's any chemical substance that's added to food during preparation or storage and either becomes a part of the food or affects the characteristics for the purpose of achieving a particular technical effect. In other words, they put it for a benefit, maslaha. And most of our food has these additives, whether we like it or not. Everything you see today you eat, if it's processed, it has something of additives in there. Now, some of the additives we already spoke about last week. For example, lecithin or soy lecithin, it's an emulsifier, helps to stick to food. And we spoke about the hukum that it's halal. The next types we're looking at is coloring. Right, so food colors, preservatives, and so preservatives could be often alcohol, and sweeteners. Now we'll give some examples because it's better to have examples. Some examples we have, for example, mono and diglyceride. If you look at all the food that you eat, if you take to the back of the ingredients, you'll find something called mono and diglycerides. What are these? These are type of additives or enzyme taken from either vegetable fat or animal fat. It could be either one of the two. But when you read your packaging, it's not clear. Others, we have clear label. We know where it's from. Another example of additive is called sorbitol. This is a sugar alcohol, sweetener. This one, we know the origin. It comes from fruit. Or it's vegetable or manufactured inside the lab. So some of the additives we can trace the origin. Some of them you can't trace it, even if you tried your best. And so from here, what kind of possible origins can these additives have? One is animal-based. So not pig, but mainly it's cow or sheep. But it's possible even pig. Or plant-based. So fruits or vegetables or like this. And lastly, synthetic. They make in the lab. So why do we have to know this? Every single food that we eat today, like I said, processed food, it has some additives, like it or not. So the problem then is, how do we know which one is from animal-based, which one is from the vegetable-based, which is plant, which is synthetic? You can't tell unless you do extremely difficult research. And just to give you the idea of how difficult this is, there's about 850 different additives found in Canada alone. 850. So that means if somebody were to research 850, they wouldn't eat anything. Because you won't have time to find out. And we already eat anyways. We already in your home, it's already there. So how do we deal with this? What did the ulama say about this kind of difficulties? So then, inshallah, we're going to make clear two principles we can work with. Two qawa'id or qa'ida, two of them. To deal with additives when we don't know the origin. You don't know the origin. Means, if I know where it's from and I can find it, this is great. But like I said, 850 of them, I can't tell. It's very difficult. And some of them, it's not labeled clearly. For example, mono, diglycerides are mentioned. It's not going to tell you where it's from. You have to look. Or glycerin, glycerol. It won't tell you where. So two principles now, inshallah, to make our life easier. The first two, I'll make it four principles. Two of them we already covered last week and the week before. First qa'idah we covered again and again, al-istihala. Al-istihala is chemical processing or physical chemical change of one product to another. We already mentioned this one a lot. So for example, if we have an enzyme that's taken from the pig, if it changes into another chemical, it goes through the process of istihala, chemical change, is halal. We already mentioned this before. Scholars, they mentioned this, majority of madhahib, they agree to the principle of istihala. The second one, which one is it? The second principle? Istihlak. Istihlak is when you have something of a impure substance and you put in a large amount of pure substance, it becomes absorbed. It loses the taste or its color or its effect. Most of the times, the amount of enzymes they're using or additives is so small, it's negligible. But there's two more principles that can come handy. One of them, umoom balwah. This is a qa'idah Muslims should know. We spoke about before in qawa'id fiqhiyya, one of the principles in our maxims in fiqh is takhfif. We know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes easy for us things in our deen when it's difficult. Al-mashaqqa, when there's difficulty, what does it lead to? Taysir. From that is the qa'idah umoom balwah. Umoom balwah means in English public predicament. Something is umoom balwah. It's a qa'idah the ulama they mention underneath the issue of takhfif, of things becoming easier when there's difficulty. It means when there is something which is so widespread, it's almost impossible to avoid it, the sharia makes it something which is overlooked because it's impossible to avoid. This is from the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the beauty of Islam, mahasin al-Islam. When something is so widespread that you can't avoid it, umoom balwah. Umoom balwah was mentioned by the ulama, مثلا Ibn Ujaym في الأشباه والنظائر, and after him Suyuti, and also in the Mawsu' al-Fiqhiyya, Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and others. The ulama mentioned this principle, umoom al-balwa or amatul balwa, public predicament, so widespread, you can't avoid it. I'll give you ta'arif now. Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he says, everything which it is not possible to avoid, it is then pardoned. Everything or anything in which it is not possible to avoid it, it is then pardoned. Means, Majmu' Fatawa, volume 1, page 592. Majmu' Fatawa, volume 1, page 592. Everything which it is not possible to avoid, it is then pardoned. Because now it's become more difficult. وَلَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. If you told me today I'm going to eat food without food additives, you're not going to eat. And that's not allowed. وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا. You have to eat and drink. So what happens is, many Muslims, if they look at this issue, they could become very dangerous. How can I avoid it? عموم balwa akhi, you can't avoid it. And who said that food additives are from those things which are too widespread? Here I'm going to read you a fatwa or a qarar, a decision or final conclusion mentioned by Majma' al-Fiqh ad-Duwali, the International Fiqh Academy. We mentioned them more than once in these lessons. Majma' Fiqhi and the Majma' Fiqhi ad-Duwali. These are two big Islamic councils of scholars. Majma' Fiqhi ad-Duwali is headed by Sheikh Salih ibn Humayd, Hafidhullah. From this year, I think they started this one in the year, it says here, 2015. So from the things that they study is the following. They say point number 5. Point number 5. No, point number, not 5. Point number 3, I think it is. Give me 1 second here. Which one is it here? Point number 5. They say food. They say now, food which has in it a small amount of alcohol which has been placed in it, specifically for additives and preservatives which cannot be liquefied in water. I'm going to get to that one again too. You have to remember additives, why are they in the food? To change the color, the taste. But how do you preserve them? You put a little bit of alcohol. They continue to say, these things, these malawwanat and hafidat, these preservatives and colorings, are permissible to consume the umoom balwa, due to the public predicament. And the fact that some of these additives, they get absorbed during the process of production until the end of their point. And I'm going to get to that in a second. So not only is it umoom balwah, but the fact that you can't avoid it, there's another problem with the additives, which is they have alcohol in it too. Often they come with alcohol. And I'm going to get to that in a second. So what do we say? The first qa'idah to help us to not be worried. Food additives, whatever the origins they may be, with the fact that they have alcohol, often ethyl alcohol, min umoom balwah. You can't avoid it. Public predicament, inshallah, from that janib, it's permissible. Because if you told me I'm going to avoid it, you can't avoid anything. So you can't avoid it. And secondly, Sharia didn't come to make things difficult, it came to make things easy. Second principle is that what if you get a product, a food, for example, I buy some crackers or biscuits, and there has all these chemicals, I don't know which one is which. I don't know, this one's from pork, this one's from, and I can't trace it even if I go online and look, it's not clear. Should I throw away the food or so I can still eat it? I buy some biscuits from the market, I read the ingredients, I see all those chemicals, I don't know. Is it plant-based, synthetic-based, animal-based? Can I keep it or I have to throw it? What's the qa'idah? What's the principle here? We don't know exactly what it is, but I know biscuits are halal, I know that much. I'm not clear, so what do I do? Keep it or throw it? We keep it. Why do you keep it? Because when it comes to food and drink, you don't reject them or neglect them or discard them due to doubt. Only when you have yaqeen or ghalab al-dhann. You have to have certainty. There's a khamr in here, and it's a large amount. Or, I'm certain there's a pork in here, no istihlak. I'm certain, or I'm very likely. And that side I put it away. But if it's just shak, I don't know, this, let's say, this diglyceride could be khamr, could be pork, could be is not enough to deny the food. Qa'idah here, the Malikiyya, they mentioned in their books, the ulama of the Maliki madhab, they mention the qa'idah, الطعام لا يطرح بشك. It's helpful actually, yeah. الطعام لا يطرح بشك. Food is not dropped or left off due to doubt. Shak means 50-50. I don't know, maybe. If you have yaqeen, it's different. Now this is important. Why? Because here it goes back to the other qa'idah, the principle we mentioned from the first day in these lessons, which is Al-aslu fi al-At'imah wal-Ashribah hil. Origin of food and drink is permissibility. And 9 out of 10 of us, we don't even concern ourselves with some of these additives because most of what you eat has it. So this is important because if you don't have these principles, if somebody comes to you and says, I don't know brother, this is haram. You may tell yourself, no, I'm shak. I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to eat that. And that's not how the believer should be. When it comes to the abwab of fiqh or halal and haram, you have to have certainty and clarity and principles. Al-halalu ma ahalla Allah fi kitabihi, wal-haram ma harram Allah fi kitabihi, wa ma sakata anhu fa huwa ma'fu, wa huwa afu. That hadith is important for us. Halal is what's halal in the Quran, the Sunnah. Haram is what's haram in the Quran and Sunnah. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept silent about, it's pardoned. And I'm saying this because, alhamdulillah, for these qawa'id and the ulama, what they teach us, otherwise you will spend most of your time just checking your food is halal or haram. And then somebody may add, then what about if I'm not sure? Alhamdulillah for these principles. Otherwise, your food could be haram, and then your da'am could be in question, and then your ibadah, and nobody's going to say that. Somebody's eating a biscuit, you're going to tell them, there's a shak in your ibadah now. It's a biscuit. This is a mushkila some people have, and it leads to anxiety. Some Muslims, they have anxiety. I think it's haram, I think it's halal. Waswas in the deen is not, you don't establish your deen based on waswasa and halwasa, all these imaginations and hallucinations that some people have. Okay, next issue then, we said, additives, they have what? Alcohol then. Additives, you have a small amount of alcohol which they dilute the food in. They put, for example, some of the additives or preservatives to keep the food. So, for example, some of the coloring, sometimes they might put a little bit of alcohol to keep it to put it into the food. Or they'll put a little bit of alcohol in the food to keep it going. Or they need it in order to control or to keep it inside because water doesn't work. What do the ulama say about this? And that's my next topic about alcohol. But they'll finish this one. Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami, they mention the Islamic Fiqh Council, the 9th Medical Council. And you can find this in Majalla al-Majma' al-Fiqh al-Islami, volume 10, page 1431. They say, additives that are used in a form that is diluted in alcohol and is used in a very small amount, quantities, in the food or medicine, such as colorings and preservatives and emulsifiers, this is an example of istihlak. Alhamdulillah, istihlak. So the Majma' says all of that is istihlak, from the idea that even if they're impure, it's too small to make the thing impure, or it gets absorbed in your food. So why is this important? If you didn't have this, you're going to question now the color of your food. And that's actually my next one. There's one additive Muslims they have a problem with. I'm going to explain it now. But this is important. Additives are used in the food in the form that is diluted in alcohol and is used in small amounts, very small amounts. Then it's from the istihlak. Alhamdulillah. So, and the same thing, Majma' Fiqh Duwali said the same thing. Therefore, nobody should be concerned about the additives in their food. However, there's one topic in particular, I have to discuss this one. There's one particular dye that many Muslims are confused about, and that's a dye called E120, or carmine, or cocahino beetle. It's a special beetle, small bug. It produces the red dye. Now some people will say, what's this name? E120 is a categorization in Europe. E means for Europe, it's for the additives. Canada, we don't use that. We have other one, numbers. So all the additives, you can see the list online, all the numbers, and which one is allowed in Canada, which is not. This one is called cocahino beetle, or carmine dye. It's used in food and cosmetics. It produces the red dye in the food that you eat. For example, if you eat red velvet, it's there. Some of you like some of those candies with red, it's there. The red lipstick, it's in there. All of that. Now this one, the mashayikh, the ulama, they have some khilaf. Some people say it's haram. Some majami', they make tahreem of the cocahino or carmine red coloring. Sometimes called red 40, I think, but I'm not sure if it's the same thing. Cocahino is called C-O-C-H-I-E-N-E-L, E120 or carmine. And this one specifically, the Muslims, they have question about. The other ones, like other colors, they also are there. But this one, some bodies of Islamic bodies, they say it's haram. For example, Darul Uloom, and the muftis are connected to them, they say it's haram. The cocahino or the carmine, red dye. What's the sabab? The tahreem, they say, because it comes from this small insect that grows on a cactus, and when they crush it, it brings the red carmine, this kind of acid which is red. That's the coloring. So they say it's consuming carmine is impermissible due to the fact that intaking of insects is prohibited. Because how do you make this thing? You take these bugs off the cactus, they pulverize them, they smash them, and the red color comes, they put more chemicals, now they have the dye. Alright, so actually you're eating something that has bugs in there. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I'm just mentioning what it's coming from. What's the other opinion? The second opinion is that it's halal. And this is the opinion of Lajnat Da'ima, the Permanent Committee of Saudi Arabia. Alhamdulillah, we translated this fatwa some time ago. And the Lajnat Da'ima, they have a fatwa after they mentioned to them all the process. They said that based on what the questioner said regarding the method of extracting the dye from the insects after melting them and grinding them and straining them and extracting the solid, based on the fact that color is a trace and not the insect itself, which is repugnant to eat until the end of the fatwa. It's a little bit longer. So Lajnat Da'ima says halal, this dye. And they have a reason behind it. There's a reason. So now we have two opinions now. One is haram, one is halal. And why is it important? Because if we just said a minute ago, all the additives are umoom, balwah, inshallah is forgiven. Some Muslims, they want to make some kind of investigation. Ta'ammuq, yani unnecessary detail. But how do we answer that? Is it halal or haram? So inshallah we'll answer the question then, this issue. We have to divide into two types. Two issues here. Number one, there's two different dyes. One of them is called cocahino extract. It's actually, you take the bug and you break it into you squish it, you pulverize it. The other one, you take the juice or the coloring that comes out of the bug. So you take out the body of the bug after it's taken, and you take that which is left behind. So there's two types, carmine and cocahino extract. They divide them. And I apologize, brother, there's a lot of things I'm saying here, I know. But the point is, those who said it's haram, they say that the first type is haram because you're eating bugs. Literally, you break the bugs and you take the red liquid. So literally, they grind it. All left is with the red, and they mix it with chemicals. Now you're eating that. The other group of the ulama, the other one, which is called carmine, they said this one is not even the bug, it's just the color left behind. You boil them with the chemicals, then you throw out the body, and you keep the liquid. It's athar, it's not the actual bug. In both cases, it's still halal, inshallah. Both cases, the carmine or cocahino extract, فهو halal, it's halal. Why? First issue. The ulama, they agree, except for the Malikiyya, that it's haram to eat bugs. Majority, we mentioned before, majority of ulama say haram to eat bugs by themselves because they're mustakhbath, something which is filthy and no one wants it, or no one's inclined to want to eat it. Except for Imam Malik and rahimahullah, the Malikiyya, who they believe, in one of his views he says halal, another view he says haram. And this is mentioned by many ulama like Ibn Hubayra and ikhtilaf a'immat al-ulama. However, the first type, cocahino extract, why is it not eating bugs? Because you don't just crush the bug and then pour it into your food. You put something called aluminum into that, ammonia and sodium carbate. So inshallah, istihlak is going on here. It's not just you crush it and you pour it into. You crush it, then you put some ammonia, then you mix it and you boil it, it becomes something else. So if someone told me there's still bugs in there, we said yes, it started like bugs, but it became something else. And you can actually see online how they make it. Actually, they have videos, they show you how they make it. But Legends Dye, why did they say it's halal? They said that we're not talking about the bug, we're talking about the athar, the traces. Because carmine is the acid that comes out the bug. It's not the bug itself. And now, they actually have a point. And what's the dalil? That if you told me, for example, it's haram to eat a certain bug, but it's not haram what the bug leaves behind of traces or liquid, they use the hadith Bukhari Muslim. Or Bukhari, Abu Dawood. Many of us know the hadith, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, إذا وقع الذباب في طعام أحدكم or في شراب أحدكم. If a fly falls into the food or the drink of any one of you, what are you supposed to do? Who knows the hadith? What do you do when the fly falls into your food? First you push it in, then you take it out, and then what do? You drink or eat. You don't pour it out, the food, right? Why? Someone says, astaghfirullah, it has the bug was in there, or the fly is in there. Because they say that the athar of this fly, first of all, we know the hadith that it's a cure in sickness, so it purifies. But the athar is not the hukum of the hashara by itself. It's not the same. Difference between the trace and the bug. That's istidlal daqiq, very good benefit to take. And who agreed with them in this permanent committee? They mentioned the point. Even here, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't say pour out your food and drink. Take the bug out and eat the rest. So whatever left behind is pure. Imam Ibn Qayyim, he mentions in Zad Ma'ad, after a long discussion about this, he says, Amr fiqhi, we take a benefit from this hadith fiqhi, which is, it's clear evidence that if a fly or any insect falls into your food, it doesn't make it impure. وهذا قول جمهور العلماء, and we don't know any salaf who differ on this. And then they bring the hadith, and he actually argues that what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us here about the fly applies to the ant and the wasp and the spider and etc. etc. So there's no tanjis here, there's no najasa. In fact, it's halal. What's left behind is okay. Legends Daima, their fatwa then is that when you make this carmine, you boil the insect, then you strain the insect out of it, and you leave behind the trace. See? This fatwa here is not the other fatwa, they say the insect itself. That's one type. The other ulama, the ulama, when they looked at it, look carefully at the mas'ala. Because we said before, حكم عن شيء فرع عن تصوره. Always important to have tasawwur mas'ala. You have to understand the issue at hand. If you don't understand the issue at hand, you're going to give wrong fatwa. So the ulama, they understood from what you explained, this is what's happening. The other opinion, which says haram, they looked at it just from the insect. Which is true, the insect shouldn't be eaten. But we're not talking about eating the insect. And even if you told me that the insect's being eaten, it's mixed with other chemicals. How come that's not registered in the fatwa? Another benefit to give you this is the fact, this also was mentioned by Shaykh Bassam in Tawdih al-Ahkam fi Bulugh Maram. He also mentions the same point. The ulama, they mention the same thing that if the fly falls into your food, etc., is not haram. والانتفاع بما وقع فيه فهو باق على طهارته وماليته. Whatever is remaining after the fly has been removed, it remains in its purity and it's your wealth to use. So side benefit, are insects najis? Based on this, is an insect najis? No, especially if it doesn't have any blood. They say that which doesn't have the blood, like the blood that we're used to, then if it's not najis, and that's another side that shows. So inshallah, khulasatul qawl of all of this, inshallah it is halal, and that's the fatwa and legend to da'ima. And even if you told me the first type, cocahino extract, which is not like the same as the other one, inshallah there's istihlak going on because ammonia and sodium carbate are also mixed in it. So no one should be worried about that, inshallah ta'ala, because at the end of the day, this is something which is made easy for us. طيب, inshallah, what time is remaining, we'll talk a little bit about alcohol, and next week, inshallah, we'll continue. So alcohol is the next topic of many topics that we covered in these lessons, and the ruling on khamar and the byproducts that are in there. Khamar we know is haram in Islam, and khamr is ma khamar aql. Alcohol, intoxicants, whatever intoxicates or the mind or clouds the mind, whether it be liquid or solid, whether it be alcohol like wine, beer, or drugs. All of that is khamar. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibited khamar in the Quran in Surah Baqarah ayah 219 and Surah Ma'idah ayah 90. And it's a fa'idah we have to know as Muslims. If someone were to ask you, what's the hikmah, the illah behind the tahrim khamar? We should have an answer for them. What's the wisdom and the reason behind alcohol being prohibited? As Muslims, this question comes a lot to us because we live with non-Muslims who drink, and they ask you, well, why is haram? And the mashayikh, they even give the answers to this because in da'wah you should be able to explain. Because Judaism and Christianity, they can drink. In their religion, they drink. Islam, we don't. So first, Allah tells us in Surah Al-Baqarah, they ask you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about khamr wal maysir, intoxicants and gambling. Say in them there's a sin, and also manafi' anil nas. There's a benefit. No one's denying that there's some benefit, but there's more harm than benefit. وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. What is the benefit? The ulama, they mention this ayah. Mufassirun, they say the benefit in khamr is that it gives you some kind of relaxation or downtime. When you drink it, you feel relaxed or calm. Or you can trade and buy and sell. Right? That's why alcohol is one of the biggest businesses in this country and the rest of the world. Profit from the tijara of selling alcohol and intoxicants. And some people before said, how about the health benefits? That one's actually disputed. Right? This is actually disputed. But scientifically, there's studies showing that there's actually no real health benefits to alcohol. And I'm going to mention that in a second. Because now the ulama say, khamar is haram. What's the hikmah behind the prohibition? Why? What's the wisdom? Number one, they say, the hikmah is tahrim khamar is hifd al-aql, to preserve your intellect. From the 5 major maqasid, we said in deen, it comes to preserve your intellect. When you drink or you smoke or intoxicants, you damage your intellect. And Islam came to preserve the intellect. This was mentioned by some of the scholars. Others, they mention that which comes from it of mafasid. So not only is that they are preserving intellect, we know in Islam you bring about masalih and you stop mafasid. Intoxicants has more mafasid. You drink, you start to drink and drive, you kill people, you do wrong things, you abuse your family, etc., etc. Waste your wealth, you name it. Thirdly, they say that preserving the intellect and the body is from the maqasid, so therefore anything that will lead to harm is prohibited. Now somebody will say, and this is important because non-Muslims, they ask this question, they say, but there's some health benefits for red wine, for your liver. We tell them that's old studies. The newest studies show there's no benefit whatsoever for alcohol intoxicants. You can Google it. There's a recent study came out with the biggest longitudinal study that's available. Of all the various studies, they found there's not any real tangible benefit for drinking alcohol. And from there, some of the doctors, they disputed this, scientists, because, people still drink, so they want to give them something. They said, and this is actually interesting, people don't know this, there's no government organization in the world or health organization that tells you to drink. All they say is, if you're going to drink, drink moderately. See the difference? They don't tell you to drink. They say, if you're going to do it because you feel like you want to, then drink moderately. What's the difference between the two? Do you need to drink? No. Is it bad to drink? Yes. If you're going to drink, drink less. And sometimes you see those ads, drink responsibly. It's irresponsible to begin with. So it's like saying gamble responsibly. How? It's irresponsible. And I'm saying this because some of the non-Muslims, when they come to you, they want to know why Islam prohibits it. Tell them, do you know anyone today who's from the health community who drinks? I'm talking about health professionals who are up there, health gurus, who gym experts. No. So why are you drinking? Only people who are drinking, if you take a look, even the successful billionaires, if you look at the biography, they don't drink. It's not something that's hidden now. And this is important for the Muslim to have a position to explain our deen with ilm wal hikmah. Lastly, the illah, the prohibition, revolves around intoxication. And I'm going to mention that in a second. So you always have to remember, alcohol is prohibited due to illah wal hikmah. Illah is the intoxication. If it intoxicates you, that's alcohol prohibited. Hikmah, for those ones I mentioned. One last benefit, some people may ask this, someone asked this before, if alcohol is prohibited for everybody, what if I drink in small amounts? I'm a responsible person. I only drink socially, once in a while with the company, and I drink a little bit. I'm not like the other people. Well, how do we answer these persons? Some will say, but why haram for everybody? I'm responsible. We tell in Islam, and like legal laws in all the countries across the world, the Sharia is for everybody, not for individuals. Al-Hukm li-ghalib, always rulings of everybody, not the individuals. So if I come today and say it's okay for you to speed because you're responsible, for you it's prohibited, there's no law like that. No law in the world is for individuals, it's for everybody. Because the maslahah of the community has to be taken. So we tell the person, even though you could be responsible, many people are not. On top of the fact that you don't even have to drink to be healthy and successful. So alhamdulillah for this. And this is important because again, like I said, next time someone asks you, explain to them properly. Because they themselves don't know why they drink. طيب, the ulama then they mention, the alcohol in food is of two types we know. For taste and flavor, like when you're drinking, for example, wine and beer, you put in the food or you drink it for the flavor and the taste. That's haram to do that. To drink it for flavor and taste or intoxication or put in your food for that. But sometimes alcohol is found in food for the ones I mentioned a moment ago, preservation. Right? Just to keep it, the shelf life going. Like you keep it to preserve the food. Solvent, they call it. Solvent. Okay, inshallah today we'll just mention a little bit. Next week we'll go more into it. The hukum, the ruling regarding alcohol, you have to know what kind of alcohol is present now in food. Alcohol has two types according to the ulama and the chemists. Two types. Number one, ethyl alcohol or ethanol. Sometimes you call it spirtu. This word is used, I think, in the Arab world. This is a company that's very famous. Or they call it al-kuhul ethiri, ethyl alcohol. This one is the one that's used in medicine and the one you find in all the khumur. This is the one gets you drunk. Ethyl alcohol. E-T-H-Y-L. This one gets you drunk. Ethyl alcohol. Ethanol. The second one is called methanol or methyl alcohol or methyl alcohol. This one is poisonous. It doesn't give you intoxicant. It kills. That's why it's using pesticides to kill the bugs and these kind of things. So methanol, poison. Ethanol, khamar. So now why do you have to know this? All the beer, wine, even your cologne. Sheikh was mentioned to us, even these issues. We'll get to that one more next week, more detail, because this one, there's a tafsir needs. But they have ethanol. They have ethanol, the one that gets you intoxicated. So here now the ulama, they mentioned this, and the chemists. And Shaykh Al-Albani, rahimahullah, in one of his sittings, Silsila Huda wa Nur, tape 83, he was sitting one time talking about the hukum on this, and the chemist was there explaining the farq. So Shaykh accepted, okay, one of them is intoxicant, the other one is the poison. Ethanol is the intoxicant. So remember the ethyl. The other one is methanol. This one is a poison. So ethanol is found in food and drink and everywhere, all over in your food. And it's also the one you find in the market when you're eating or you're buying products. But some people don't know this. There's also another type of alcohol, which is called natural occurring alcohol. This natural occurring alcohol is a fruit base, for example. Fruits have alcohol. This is tabi'i. It goes inside by itself. I'll give you an example. If you have a ripe fruit, fruit by itself, when it gets ripe, it has 0.6% ethanol. It stays longer, 0.9. If you keep it there over-ripened, 4.5% ethanol. The kuffar, I don't know what they're writing, but one of them was writing, some scientists, that they say the hayawanat, they eat this, maybe some intoxication or something. They were saying some historical reason, evolutionary reason why we drink khamar, from the fact that the animals, anyways, this is their ideas. So even now you notice, if you eat the sweetness that you find, after a while the sweetness goes to sourness, and it keeps going. Is it haram then, fruits? Someone says banana, orange is haram. Someone will tell you that it has alcohol. We'll say, so what? This doesn't intoxicate. Al-hukm yudur ma'illatihi wujud ma'adama. So there, Shaykh Abdul Razak Afifi, rahimahullah, he said, the orange peel has alcohol in it, but it's not intoxicant, it's halal. I'm only saying this because there's some people, they think alcohol haram. So here now is the question, and I'll finish with this. The hukum then, it doesn't matter if alcohol is in your food and drink. How much is in it is not the question. Question is, does it intoxicate? Ask this the question. So some people, they think, okay, 1% is halal, 2% halal, 3% halal, 5% haram. No, there's nothing like this in the Sharia. Or some people say, if it's ethanol, it's haram. If it's the other one, halal. No, it doesn't work like that. If you have alcohol in a bottle, in and of itself, if it's intoxicant in and of itself, فَهُوَ haram to drink, use. But you have to differentiate between the one that's put into the food. Two rulings now we have to have. Again, many Muslims, they misunderstood the hadith. مَا أَسْكَرُ كَثِيرُ فَقِيلُ الْحَرَامِ. They don't understand the hadith. What intoxicates is small amounts, large amounts, small amounts is prohibited. They think anything that has alcohol haram. So you tell them, it's banana haram. They will say no. Say, why? It has toxic, but it doesn't intoxicate. So the qa'idah then, al-hukum here, al-hukum yudur ma'illatihi. Rulings revolve around their reasons, wujud and adama. In their wujud, in the presence or absence. And here now I'm going to read you something beautiful from Shaykh Uthaymeen. I'm going to mention this again next week. It's very good fatwa. The Shaykh was asked this question, this issue. He said, I believe this, I have to find this story, I think it's liqa, bab maftuh. He says, do not think that a percentage of alcohol makes something haram. For example, he says, the amount of alcohol, if it doesn't affect the person, in terms of intoxicating them, or if it's mixed with something else, it doesn't become haram. As for the percentage, small amounts, they don't have any effect. For example, 1% or 2% or 3% doesn't make food haram. Shaykh Uthaymeen is saying this. Why? We're going to talk about it next week. Vinegar has alcohol, yes or no? White vinegar I'm talking about, the regular one you use for your cooking. Yes. How much alcohol does it have? Anyone wants to guess how much it has? White vinegar, the one you have in your fridge. Less than 5. 1 to 2%. So nobody ever said vinegar is haram, ever. And no one does. So it shows you, percentage, don't look at it. Look at does it make you intoxicated? Then the Shaykh said some people got the hadith wrong. Whatever intoxicates in and of itself, for example, if I have a bottle of wine, in and of itself, haram. If it intoxicates in large amounts, that small amount of that particular thing is haram. But when you take this alcohol and you put it into something else, and you mix it, now we have to ask, does this thing intoxicate in and of itself? See the difference? For example, you take some wine intoxicates in and of itself, haram. Somebody poured it, or by accident put some wine into the food. The other person mixed it. Now I have to ask the question, does the food intoxicate in and of itself or not? Not, it has a khamr and therefore haram. Same thing, some Muslims think, okay, it's haram to drink lots of wine, but small shot is okay. They didn't understand. If it's intoxicating, it's haram. So this principle Shaykh Uthaymeen mentions is very important. Why? Because you don't look for numbers. And some Muslims, they follow this. And if you go to country, the numbers go up and down. Canada, we have 1%, UK has 1%, America has a higher percentage. So what is considered alcohol-free even is not alcohol-free. It has percentage. Most people don't know, 0.5% to under or above. Some countries, 1.2% is considered alcohol-free. 1.2%. Why am I saying this? Because this, alhamdulillah, helps us from a lot of issues. Next week, inshallah, we'll get into this one more. Last one, the ulama then mentioned about the food. Maybe I will stop with this much, inshallah. And I want to take one more question the Shaykh mentioned, ask about the soap. And the soap that have in there some kind of pork or animal fat. So very famous, we said this before, especially in the past, when the Muslims that came to this country, we found the soap has a lard or animal fat, particularly Irish Spring. Irish Spring. This is the one that's very common. So many Muslims in the past, they had a mushkilah, halal or haram. If you go to the ingredients, and the Shaykh was mentioning to us too, that if you call them, they say it has glycerin and also has sodium tauylate. These two have maybe animal origin. But the amount is very small, number one. Number two, we don't know. It doesn't tell you, but this, if you Google it, sodium tauylate comes from an animal. Which ones? Cow or sheep. So now we have mushkila. Cow or sheep could be Ahlul Kitab, or it could be Muslim, or it could be Mayyit. So with those things, the ulama, when they come to this issue, they say, بباب الاستحالة, that's one big one, or istihlak. مثلا, Shaykh Al-Albani in the early, I believe it was the 90s, here in Silsila Huda wal Noor, tape 91, they asked the Shaykh about soap that has lard and pig fat. He said, halal min bab istihala. Because it's very small amount, very small. And so even though, if you Google it, it says a sodium towel, it could be sheep or cow. We don't know Ahl Kitab, is it dhabiha? This one goes back to the shak, and we can't make hukum with shak. But we do know that if there was actually pork, it's a very small amount, inshallah, and it doesn't make it haram. And maybe next week I will find the fatwa Ibn Uthaymin. He also have a fatwa on this one, inshallah. Inshallah, we'll end with this much. Jazakumullah khair. Inshallah, we'll take questions.
So if the alcohol is present in a very insignificant quantity, then it's permissible.
Exactly. So the alcohol is present in a food, and it's very insignificant quantity in that if you were to drink this particular food, you won't get intoxicated, it's halal. 0.5%, the Shaykh says yes, it's halal. And you can see, you actually notice, like I said, 0.5, 1, 2, these are not even, in some countries, they're not considered even alcohol present. But why is this important? Because you have to judge on that product itself. An example, I will give flavor shots. In some flavor shots, they may have some alcohol, ethyl alcohol, in the flavor shot to keep it present. You put that into your cold drink. Now I have a drink without alcohol. I can drink 10 of them. Maybe I get diabetes before I get intoxicated. Maybe. So then that's the ruling. So we have to go back to that. Question says, is it haram to throw away leftover food in the garbage? If someone has a food left over and they don't want to eat it and it's eaten, it's best not to throw it in the garbage, but to give it to the animals. This is the best. But so if you have leftover food, if it's obviously nice amount, you can give to somebody else, or you save it. But let's say you don't want it, it's better to give it to the animals than throw it in the garbage, because that's ida'atul mal, wasting money, and it's haram to do that. And obviously, if someone notices that you have a lot of wasted food, you have to change your habits. If you're eating too much or you don't like this thing, you have to change the habits. Because the ulama even talk about when you clean your dishes, all the food that goes inside the drain, when you're cleaning, Shaykh Uthaymin, he even spoke about that. He said, this is not good. Baqayat, they left, you shouldn't waste it. Some people, they don't clean the plate. So they put it in the sink and they just waste it. So even that far Islam goes, because at the end of the day, somebody could benefit like the animals. Obviously, you have to do it the right way too. Question says, would you be able to discuss marijuana specifically in the next class? We can talk about that one next week, inshallah. Because I think we have a post on our website too about the medical marijuana, and then the other ones that are connected. Maybe, inshallah, we'll talk about that. Naam, Sheikh.
The bagel in the Tim Hortons, the bagel, so they have bread and bagel, and they have a fork also, so they cut the same knife, and they prepare the same table.
Yeah.
So for me, I get a lot of doubt about.
Yeah, this is a good one. Actually, we're going to get to that one, those issues. But these issues to do with cross-contamination. When they cut the pork, and then they cut the bagel. And same thing in the pizza shop. This actually, we're going to get to this. In this, we'll do a different chapter on the food preparation. But this one, the ulama, they mention the principle as well. If you know, for example, 100%, somebody, he did that. For example, you see him cutting it, then he cut this, then you can't eat it. Because if it's wet, it's wet, it transferred. If it's dry, the difference. Because you know if it transferred. But the question, let's say I see somebody, he's doing it, I see him, I say, okay, I don't want that one. Make a new one. You have actually the right to do that. But let's say he made it, I don't know what he did. He cut this one, he cut that one. Legend to Da'ima, they answer the same question. When you go to the grill, the grilling, they put the egg, and they put the beef, they put all of them, and they cook. They said, as long as you're not 100% certain, it's still halal. Still. So inshallah, we don't have to have a shak there. But you could also remind them to please not to, to clean the knife and this, and you have that right also. And we'll talk about actually later, specifically, but preparation, because this comes up a lot when people have this question, cross-contamination. Especially for now, even the vegan or vegetarian, they have the same mushkila with the Muslim. We're all together in the same, we're asking about that. Shall anyone have any question? Yes. So Shaykh Uthaymin rahimahullah, he said, well, it's a longer quote, but there's a fatwa, he said that we should not think any percentage of alcohol or intoxicants makes something permissible, because he says that that percentage, if it doesn't affect the person, i.e. in terms of intoxicating them, or if it's mixed with something else, it doesn't make the food haram. Rather, if it's a small percentage, it doesn't have effect. For example, then, he said the food will still be halal if it's 1%, 2%, 3% alcohol. For example, this doesn't make a food haram. And then he continues to explain why. So we don't look to percentage, we look to the iskar. Does it intoxicate? And inshallah, I'm going to talk about the vinegar next time, the wine vinegars and other ones where we have this issue. And this one is very important, this principle the Shaykh said. Anyone else? Yes. So this is a good question. The hand sanitizer also has that type of intoxicants. But what I understand is a very high amount. It doesn't intoxicate but poisons. So there is maybe for children or a certain age they could get a type of food poisoning. But intoxication is not that clear, because I believe there's something they put in the sanitizer. Another chemical to ensure that it doesn't intoxicate but gets you sick. Like in terms of it poisons you and damages your brain. So for those reasons the ulama, they rule the sanitizers with alcohol for the most part, because there's a khilaf too, can be used for purification or not. Some said if it's ethyl alcohol. Some said if it's not because they put something else. So maybe we'll talk about that also separately. But there is a discussion about it. Yes. Yes, mouthwash. So we're going to get to that one too. I think we have Fatwa Legend Daim or something about this one. We're going to get to that. Mouthwash, yes. Yes.
I'm not sure if this was covered in the other classes, but the ruling on blood, when you find it in some food that you eat, sometimes, even the chicken and stuff like that, it's not drained properly. And, you see like blood coming out and stuff like that. Do we continue eating it, or do we put it away?
So that's a good question. Blood found in the food after it's slaughtered. So if it's slaughtered and the blood found after, it's permissible. That blood, if the animal is permissible. And so for example, if you slaughtered a camel or a sheep, the blood that comes after it's slaughtered is permissible. Obviously you wouldn't want to eat if it has blood in there because you're worried about the health issue. But the blood doesn't take prohibition. Hadith al-Bukhari, Hadith Aisha radhiyallahu anha, that they would say that the traces of blood left in the pot after cooking, we didn't consider anything. It was not a problem for us. It means that those trace amounts is forgiven because the animal is originally permissible. The problem obviously is when some say when the animal is being slaughtered in itself at the beginning, or some say if the animal wasn't slaughtered and it was pouring, means during the time where it's come gushing, there's a khilaf on that one. But the idea, because of the ayahs and na'am. But the point is trace amounts, this is pardoned. And for the most part, I don't think anyone has a problem with it. But obviously if you find that, it's not recommended maybe to eat it because of the health issue. Na'am akhi.
Just because you're on this topic, I don't want you to go off topic.
Right.
But like steaks, even at halal restaurants, you can order, they ask you, how do you like your steak?
Yes. So
Is it permissible?
yeah, so
Medium rare?
yeah, it's allowed, yes. Islamically, some people ask the question, can you eat the meat raw? For example, let's say you go to the, rare, right? Rare. It's allowed Islamically. It's not. There's no command to cook the food, to cook the meat. So that's another topic regarding sushi and those seafood. Same one, inshallah, we'll get to that one too. Because that actually there's actually issues regarding, not that, but other things. But this question is there, if you get it, the blood is coming out, or it's rare. Even if it's raw, it can be eaten. Because there's no command for us to be cooked. The problem also is that in some cultures, it's how they eat it. So that's a good question as well. Yes? For the blood. So for example, if someone was a butcher, he slaughtered it, the blood came on him. We know hadith, there's athar, Shaykh Albani authenticates Ibn Mas'ud, radiyallahu anhu, that he would slaughter the camel, and after that all the filth, whatever is in the stomach, and the blood would come, and he would pray with salah with that thawb. Because they understood that the meat, the milk, and the blood of the animal also halal. Obviously because after the slaughter. The question is when the slaughter is going, the blood is rushing out, that one they had some discussion because the eye dem masfuha, the gushing blood. But in terms of afterwards, it's trace amounts. Alright, so inshallah that has different ruling. Bi'idhnillah, inshallah, next week we'll continue from here. And all the other topics that the brothers they asked about, inshallah, we'll add them, and the sisters will add them to the lesson. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.